getting these things glued in, the thing to remember about these is once you do this, you can't take them back apart, because the object is to glue the bolts here into the base so that they don't move and they don't spin, and only the thumb wheel will spin to raise and lower it. So the very first thing I do is I made sure that I had these adjusted so that the top of the screw here is even with the top of the slider, just like so. That way what I'm doing is I'm using these to be a depth gauge for how far that screw goes into those holes, like that. Okay? But you have to be careful. When I first was doing these, I found out that the glue does squeeze out of the hole, and if you're not observing of it, it'll glue the thumb wheel to the base. So you could probably use some wax paper or whatever to help keep that from happening. But what I've been doing, and it seems to have been working, is I take my glue and I make sure I mark my parts. I've got a 5 there and I've got a 5 here, because of making sure that the holes line up. And then I'll just take and squirt some of this glue down into here. I'm not using an epoxy. I could have used a 2-part epoxy. This was all I had, all I had handy. Okay, so that's really too full. So what I'm going to do is just blow out some air out of this thing, run this back in, and suck it back out. There we go. Okay. Now, get a paper towel here. Okay, that should be enough. So now we're going to go ahead and drop these in to their respective holes so that they're down into the hole. And now, just to make sure, all I'm going to do carefully, because I don't want to lose any glue, there's going to be glue on the threads, but I'm going to pop this back out, and you will see that the glue came, the squeeze out there. I'm going to get rid of that squeeze out. And there's going to be a little bit on the wheels, and I want to make sure that I'm very careful not to move these wheels, because I've got that depth set right where I wanted. There might be a better way. You know, everything I do, as you guys watch, I'm just kind of learning my, you know, all these new techniques too. So, okay. I'm going to drop this back in. Okay. Now I'm just going to let this set like this for about 15 minutes. And then what I do is I will come back once it's set up a little bit, and I will lift this piece off of the base and I just use a brush, put that underneath to keep it elevated, and then twist the thumb screws and holding, just so that I don't break the glue loose, holding this together here, and bring the thumb screws up so that they're not touching the base. So everything's elevated while the glue sets up, and then nothing's going to be glued together. I hope that makes sense. Maybe I'll show you that in a bit. So we're going to let this set for 15 minutes. I'll be back. Alright, so it's been sitting here for a bit. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. It's going to be carefully lifting this piece up first without pulling these things out. Just sticking that inside like that. So now I want to get, oh shoot, sorry. So now I got it lifted up. Now I want to get these thumb screws off of the base. So I'm just twisting it, and I'm keeping the screwdriver on there to keep that from moving. And now they're off of the base, so nothing can glue together. We'll let it set up for a couple hours and we'll be done. Hey you guys. Alright, so I'm going to put the sandpaper on top of this. It calls for that self-adhesive sandpaper. I've got some 3M spray glue somewhere I'm going to use, just a regular sheet, 80 grit sandpaper to do this. So I have this jig I made a long time ago that I used for my belt sander. It's just a piece of plywood and a hacksaw blade. Then I got it marked here for my 1/3 sheet lineup. So I could just stick this into underneath there and line it up with the line, and that would give me 1/3 of a sheet. I've already tore on this one, so but it's 1/3 of a sheet, and then I've got another line here to do another 1/3 of a sheet. And it works really well. I forgot, I saw this on TV. I think it was Tim Yoder, the wood turner, that showed this idea, and I thought, hey, I need that, because it's really a lot handier to do. So what I'm going to do with this now then is just take my block that I need to have, and I'm just going to kind of get it close to here. Get one end of it lined up on the edge of the, can you see what I'm doing? Maybe, okay, let's try that. Get the edge of it onto the blade, like that, and push the sandpaper out. Actually, probably push the sandpaper out before. It's not made for something this thin, I'm just trying, but I thought it might work. Okay, so I'll bring this in a little bit. There we go. That's close. I'll trim it off with a X-Acto knife. Doesn't have to be perfect. So then all I got to do now, hold this blade down a little bit, I think. There we go. And just pull this up. It's a lot easier than trying to use a pair of scissors. Okay. And that'll go right on there, yeah. And I'll just trim it with an X-Acto knife to make it look pretty, but now I'm just going to spray some adhesive on here and just glue it right down to the top of this. It worked. So, an old jig reused. But anyway, it's a nice idea, you know. You can make it smaller if you want. This was this only size hacksaw blade I had, but they make them different sizes, so you don't need quite so big as this. And all I did, I put a hole, drilled a hole in here, and I got a screw in the wall to hang it up on. We got it all together. So now we'll go ahead and try to do a setup. I've got a board here, pretty old wood. So here's what I understand that we have to do. And that guy like that. Alright, I know this project has taken a long time, but there was a lot more to it than I expected. Setting it up here is really, it's straightforward, but it really takes a lot of time and a lot of attention. And this board was really twisted bad. So I didn't want to waste too much time on showing you the setup, but I wanted you to know. Also, you'll see coming up, you're going to see some of the situations that arose that I didn't anticipate when I started the project, and man, it was not fun. Anyway, thanks for watching, and next week we'll show you the difficulties that I ran into unique to the Shopsmith.